Dee, 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 dee. Dee, 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 dee.
We're going to be starting in just a second. Yes. That actually is in the book now for Shofar.
Yeah, it is. Okay. Blessings and George.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Well, we are here. Here we are in this holy congregation as we prepare for a transition into this high holy day season that we always do in the days leading up to Rosh Hashanah. And essentially what tonight is about preparing ourselves, is about opening our hearts, is about connecting to something that is so much bigger than ourselves. And so it's fitting then to begin tonight, even before we hear from our phenomenal speaker, to do so with a havdalah, a separation between the normal cycle of our days and this particular season of the Yamim Noraim, these days of awe. And we always begin by lighting our candle. Bringing a little bit of light into our world.
Lay, lay, la 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 lay, 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 la 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 lay, lay, ya la lay, 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 la la lay, la la lay, 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 la 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 lay, 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 la 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 lay, lay, la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen borei pri hagafen yai lai la 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 lai 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 la 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 lai lai ya la la lai 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 la la lai la lai.
Turn to our spices, taking with us some of the beautiful aroma of our Sabbath day.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei minei besamim borei minei besamim lai lai ya la 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 lai 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 ya la 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 lai lai la la lai 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 ya la lai ya la lai.
And we turn to our candle with its many, many wicks, symbolizing the diversity of our community, symbolizing how each and every person in our community makes our candle a little bit brighter. And as we say the blessing, we allow the light to reflect in our fingernails, taking some of the light of Shabbat with us into the new week.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei meorei ha'esh borei meorei ha'esh lai lai ya la 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 lai 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 la 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 lai lai ya la lai 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 ya la lai ya la lai.
And with this final blessing, we transition from this day of Shabbat into a new week. From this day of Elul, the 20th day of Elul, into Selichot and officially our High Holy Days.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamavdil ben kodesh lechol ben or lechoshet ben Yisrael le'amim ben yom hashvi לששת ימי המעשה. ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול. שבוע טוב, 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 שבוע טוב. A good week, a week of peace, may gladness reign and joy increase. A good week, a week of peace, may gladness reign and joy increase. Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai Elecha, Benashuva, Benashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu
So I invite you to take those prayer books that you have, to place them in the pew in front of you, in that little area where you can place it in, because right now we're going to pause our service that we'll come back to later. But we're going to pause it because we are so incredibly blessed this evening to be able to hear our friend, our fellow community member, Frank Mink, share his story with us. And about, a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I got a call on the phone from Frank telling me a little bit of his story and asking if he could be a part of the community. All year, I've had the pleasure of having him in Torah study. And there's a quote in the Talmud that says, "I learned much from my teachers, so much more from my colleagues, but so much more from my students." And this year, in studying Musar, I might have been the teacher of the class, but I have learned so much from Frank, from the humility and the just wisdom that he's gained over the course of his life. I'm not going to share his story because he is. I would love to invite up Frank to speak. Thank you so much for being here today.
Shabbat Shalom. Just for me to say those words and to know and to mean them, I love saying those words.
Could you change the microphone?
Sure, absolutely. How about that? Better? Okay. So, lean in. I love it. I got 1,000 directors in here. I love it. I love it. Okay. So, for me just to say those words, Shabbat Shalom, means so much to me now. And to know that's not where I come from. That's not where I come from at all. I'm going to tell you a little bit about me so that you understand where I got to where I am today. I was actually born in an Irish Catholic neighborhood in South Philadelphia, where we didn't talk about being Jewish. In fact, I didn't even know. We made all of our sacraments as Catholics. My grandparents just were part of the church, and everyone that I was involved with were part of the church. As I got older, I didn't come up in a good upbringing. My parents were drug addicts. You know, we were on welfare as a kid. I don't know if you've ever had this, but when I was a kid, we used to get food stamps. These little neon fake money that the government would give us. And I remember I used to have to go to the store with these food stamps. And I was so embarrassed. So embarrassed. Because every time I'm at the corner deli in South Philly, where everyone knows your business, I had to pull out these food stamps. The most hottest girl in my neighborhood would come walking in. And you don't want to pull out food stamps in front of the hot girl, you know? It's embarrassing. You're not bawling. So, my mom gets remarried to a man who, I was born, actually, I'll tell you real quick. So my last name, which I have now, is Mink, M-E-E-I-N-K. That was not the name I was born with. That is my mom's maiden name that was later on given to me because my mom had relationships with an Italian in Philadelphia. And she being from the Irish neighborhood and him being from a diverse, somewhat Italian, and it didn't matter because when I was born with the name Frank. I was born Frank Bertolini, which is very Italian, very Italian. And so when I moved back to my mom's neighborhood after they broke up, it just wasn't safe to have Bertolini as a last name in the Irish neighborhood. So my mom and the Catholic Church and others agreed that maybe they should change my name, just so I wouldn't grow up in that neighborhood with an unsafe name. So they gave me Mink. And I didn't know anything about the last name Mink. As we move on in my life, my mom remarries to a man who was not a very nice man. Just was very much abusive to me. I hated going home every day as a child. Hated going home. I would wish to get hit by a car every day. And to tell you, in South Philly, everyone gets hit by cars. We live in these little, small, narrow streets. Everyone gets hit by cars. And you always get run over by one of your cousins because we all are related down there, and you can't sue each other because we're all related, right? And so I would go home, and I would want to get hit by a car. But I have this thing with me. I'm like super athletic, like unnaturally, I would say naturally, but I'm like unnatural. Unbelievably fast and I always played sports and was always one of the best kids and won all the awards and didn't even try. Like, I was just unbelievably fast. I'm super bow-legged. I have like the most unattractive legs you'll ever see on a human being. I mean, I'm just bow-legged with muscles, and I've always had them since I was born. Every time I would wait to get hit by that car, my brain, that let's survive this thing, would tell me to get out of the way. And every time the car come, I get out of the way. And I'd be like, what a loser. I'm the only kid in South Philly that wants to get hit by a car. And I can't get hit by a car. And I would go home and have to go face my stepfather again and just be bullied in my own home. He moved in when I was 9. By the time I was 13, I would do anything to not be around him. So finally, I get kicked out of my mom's house. He after putting his hands on me enough, my mom and him decided I should probably move with my real dad. Now, my real dad is just a drug dealer in a bar in a really, really rough part of Philly. So I have to move in with him. And I go to this all-black school where it just wasn't the nicest school. There was 20 of us, 20 white kids, not 20%, just 20 of us. And it was, things could happen at that school. I make the sports team. I try to do good in sports. And one of the days I walked in the bathroom, a couple of black kids were jumping a white kid that I knew. And as I walked in, they stopped jumping him. And the white kid looks at me. And he's like, thank you for coming in here and helping. Thank you for being here. And the black kids I knew, because I played baseball with them, they turned to me and said, Frank, you're cool, right? Meaning like I'm not going to rat on them for robbing him in the bathroom. And I looked at them and I said, yeah, I'm cool. And I walked out of that bathroom and I left them there. That bothered me to my core. That summer, I got to go up to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. For any of you that don't know the Pennsylvania area, I'll tell you, Lancaster, Pennsylvania is like the hub of the Amish. Like, that's their turf. If you had to go by gang, that's their turf. You go up there, there's horse and buggies. I mean, they're everywhere. And they don't like reenact that life. They really turn butter, right? They don't say, oh, here comes white people, let's turn butter to reenact this way. They really live that way. That was fascinating to me. And my cousins who moved up there were just like me. They were just normal kids from the neighborhood who my uncle moved them out of the city to try to give them a better life and move them up to this farmland where on this 4-mile-long road, they were the only normal people. And I'm not slamming the Amish, but they weren't normal to me as a kid, right? I mean, they didn't have electricity, but my cousins were normal. My cousin who lived up there was a couple years older than me, and he was involved with this group called the Skinheads. They were like this neo-Nazi group. And so now what happens is when I went up there, I idolized him. He was a skateboarder punk rocker the summer before with a fin that went straight in the air. He was like a real punk rock kid. And I couldn't wait to hang out with him that summer. I thought we would still be doing the punk rock thing. And my cousin had a big enough house that he would have a lot of his friends come over at night. They would climb up on this little balcony and they'd bring beer and they'd bring girls over, and they were 16, 17. I'm 13 going on 14. They had tattoos. They were just cool. And when these guys would start to talk about multiracial society doesn't work, I had no idea what you're talking about. I'm a 14-year-old kid from public education in Philadelphia. I have no idea what you're saying. But when they talked about black and whites not getting along, I said, I know exactly what you're talking about. I just got them fist fighting every day at school. So now every night when these guys would start to talk about race, I was their only encyclopedia into the urban world. They'd never been around black people. They've only been around Amish people. So when they would talk about things, they would invite, like, Frank, is this true? And they're like, and they wouldn't even believe it. Some days they'd be like, so Frank, you really take the bus with black people? I say, yeah, I got to take the L train every day to school. Yes, I see black people every day. They couldn't fathom that. So one night we go to a concert hall and they invite me to come with them. Now I still have my little skater hair. This is, the late 80s. I had it going on as a skater kid, right? I'm hanging out with these big guys. To me, they're big guys. And we go to this concert hall, and they're beating up everybody inside the concert hall. And at the end of the night, we'd all been kicked out. And I'm saying we now, because I'm now with them, we all get kicked out. And all these neo-Nazi skinheads are standing together outside the concert hall. And as everyone would come walk out, they would walk the other way. No one would walk by us. And I seen this look on people's face of fear. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Up until that point, I might be a 14-year-old athletic boy, but I was just a scared 7-year-old boy in that body. I feared everything. I feared my parents. I feared my step-parents. I feared my school. I feared if I was going to have enough food to eat today. Now somebody fears me. And I loved it. So they brought me back to this little gathering that they were having that night. And one of the older guys there said, when are you going to shave this stuff? And he hit me in the head. When are you going to shave this off your head? I said, I'll do it right now. And they all sat me down, and they shaved my head for me. So I go to my first neo-Nazi group gathering where they're going to talk about beliefs. And I would go, and in my neighborhood growing up, I had heard things about Jews. I had heard how do you start a Jewish parade? You roll a penny down the street, and everybody would laugh. Or I would hear things like, oh, I was at the store today, and John didn't give me back the right change. He tried to Jew me. And they would laugh. And I remember asking my uncle one time, what's so funny about that? Because I didn't get the joke. And he goes, well, Frank, the Jews, they're notorious about money. You know what? You'll get it when you're older. You'll get it when you're older. Well, I'm at my first neo-Nazi gathering where there's these older men teaching us, and they start talking about how this Zionist occupational government, this made-up government, secretly takes money from the Federal Reserve and gives it to Israel. And as they're talking about this, now I'm a 14-year-old kid and you're talking to me about the Federal Reserve. I'm 30, I'm 40-something now, and I still don't know what the Federal Reserve does, but I knew there what they were talking about. And what happened in that meeting was I got the joke. I got the jokes. It all came together. I must be older now. I must be older. Now, I want to know what the adults know in my life. They left me to fend for myself. I want to know why my uncles got these jokes. So I go to these Bible studies. They have these Bible studies up at these military camps. And we go up there, and you're gonna get a kick out of this one. So the story goes like this. Adam and Eve, you're going to love this one, Rabbi. You're going to love this one. Adam and Eve are in the garden, and this serpent that comes to Eve is a demon to them, to their story, and he gets to have sex with Eve. That's the fruit. That's where the sin is. And he impregnates her with Cain. Now, Cain later on kills Adam and Eve's real son of Abel. But Cain is the first evil Jew on the planet. And now, just to back up that this is really what these people teach, if you ever, for whatever reason, you have to look at their websites or listen to something that they're saying, they always say the Jews are the seed of Satan. It goes back to that story. So now I'm being taught through the Bible how to hate, and I'm gathering it up. See, what you do when you join these groups, it's a bait and switch. I want to be proud of my heritage. Come join my group. We'll be proud of your heritage. But when you join these groups, we never talk about our heritage. We talk about everybody else's heritage and how it's bad. So I get very active in this movement. It was my life. If you've seen some of the tattoos that I used to have, they're horrendous. I used to have a swastika tattooed on my neck. So in this time, I become very active in this movement, and part of our thing is we fight these left-wing groups. Well, I kidnapped one of their leaders, and that's just kind of how I rolled. I was 17 at the time. I get caught up and I go to prison in the state of Illinois. That's where I was at the time. I went from Philly to Illinois. So I'm in Illinois and I get arrested and I have to do adult prison time at 17 years old. While I'm in prison, I'll tell you the story because Hashem is so good to me. I'm in the hole because I'm 17 years old, and I'm the youngest kid in the prison at the time. So they keep me in the hole for my own protection. In the hole means in solitary confinement, where they keep you so no other inmates can get to you. And I'm the youngest kid in there. So I start reading, and I read this part in the Bible about fasting. And it says, and I believe it's in the New Testament, but it said, if you fast and you don't brag or boast, that you're fasting, so God will help you. Think God will reveal himself to you. So I'm like, okay. This weekend, I picked this one weekend, I'm going to fast. I'm not going to eat. And when the guards would come and slide the food to me, I'd always slide the food back out. Because if I knew the food got in my cell, I was going to eat it because I was always so hungry. So I would slide the food out, and they say, Mr. Mink, are you, I think they would still call me Mink then at the time, say, are you refusing to eat? And I just say, yeah. And they say, why? Can't tell you. But I'm thinking that I'm going to fast. Now, again, I'm insane at the time. I'm thinking that if I fast, that God's going to kill everybody and knock down the wall and let me go home tomorrow. Like, that's what I'm fasting for, because I'm a 17-year-old kid who's an egomaniac with no self-esteem at all in this prison. So 3 days goes by, and finally, the warden comes in on Sunday. Now, I had already planned that I was going to eat on Monday. I'd already made that plan. I was going to do a 3-day fast, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and this is Sunday after my last meal, and I have not told anybody yet why I'm fasting. So the warden comes in, thinks I'm trying to he thinks I'm trying to kill myself. So he pulls me out of my cell and says, why are you not eating? I said, I can't tell you, but you better prepare. Some stuff's going down tomorrow, right? And he says, okay. But he just said, again, he goes, you're not trying to harm yourself, are you? I said, I'm not. He goes, well, I'll make a deal with you, Mr. Mink. If you eat tomorrow, now you gotta remember, my case is high profile. I even had my own TV show as a neo-Nazi. I used to promote that much of this stuff. He says, if you eat tomorrow, I'll put you in general population. I don't think you need to be in this segregation hole. I think you're okay. And if for him, because he was the warden, I was like, sure, warden, for you, okay, I'll eat. I already planned on eating. Monday, he comes and gets me after I ate my breakfast. And he came and got me. And there was this overwhelming feeling that I still can remember to this day, where God said, I'm not going to give you what you want, because you're insane. I'll give you what you need. And he got me out of a cell block where I've been talking to myself for the past few weeks. When you have nobody else to talk to, you start to talk to yourself. And it was getting really scary in there. And that happened. So then I go on into this other part of the prison. I wound up getting 3 to 5 years for kidnapping. And I get sent up state prison. I was in the same prison with a man named John Wayne Gacy, if any of you guys remember him. I'm in the same prison with him. I'm 17 years old. He killed 33 17-year-old boys, 18-year-old boys. And I'm in the same prison. That's how bad society thinks I am. And I was. So what happened is I started to play some sports in there. When you're a young white guy in there, I was very well protected because of who I was. So I didn't worry about all the stuff you hear about. But when the older white guys would go play sports, they were bikers from southern central Illinois. They don't know how to dribble a basketball. They can fix your transmission at 2 years old, but they cannot dribble a basketball. And I can. I played my sports my whole life. So playing with them was not fun. So one day, some of the younger black kids that I had been through the county jail system with, I seen them and started talking with them and said, hey, you guys should let me play with you. And they let me play. And then they seen I was good. Then we played football, and they seen I was really good. So I would be this only white guy that would show up we played every other week, and had a big swastika on my neck. So the first job my teammates would give me, because they didn't really want me to play, was kickoff returns, knowing that nobody was going to block for me. The other team's running down at me top speed, and they're going to rip my head off as soon as they get to me. But I'm fast, and when I'm scared, I'm even faster. And I've ran these kickoff returns back. So these guys just started to get to know me, and we started to play cards sometimes. And I wound up having a daughter when I was in prison. And I didn't want to go to my older inmates and say, hey, guys, my older white inmates, and say, hey, I had a daughter, da-da-da-da-da. Because the older white inmates in there would like to tell you really nasty things about your girlfriend while you're in prison. They just do. It's the rules. The older black inmates do it to the younger black inmates. But when I had my daughter, I wound up, the first 3 people I told, hey, I had my daughter, were the black kids on my team. So I'm getting released from prison. I hadn't changed my beliefs yet. I just was surviving in there. I thought when I get back out of prison, I got a swastika tattooed on my neck. It's not like I'm just going to change my beliefs like that, I didn't think. So I get out of prison, go home and try to be a father, not working well. I'm an alcoholic, a full-blown alcoholic at the time, which comes up in my blood. My genes tell me you're probably going to be an alcoholic if you look back at where all my family comes from. And I go back to Philadelphia, where when I go back to Philly, my old neo-Nazi crew is huge. They're gigantic now. They gotten bigger while I was going. And I come home as like a little celebrity. I did my prison time, I shut my mouth, and I used to have a TV show, whatever. All ego, all ego, all ego. And when I would go to these little meetings sometimes, and I would hear these new young neo-Nazis coming in, and they would talk really, just say some stupid old racist jokes. And I remember thinking, like, that really sounds stupid now. Just in a funny way, that sounds stupid. All black people are this way. I just spent a whole year locked up with some guys that were pretty good dudes. But the one thing I was going to hold on to was when they talked about the Jews. I said, I can get to that. I didn't meet any Jews in prison. Sorry, just didn't happen. It wasn't the white-collar prisons where I was. So I go and I'm trying to keep these beliefs because I want to stay part of this movement. I have clout. I have pull. This is where I have meaning and purpose. But I can't get a job because I got a swastika on my neck. You know what I mean? You go in for a job application, I had skinhead written on my knuckles, and aggravated kidnapping, which will stick with me for life as a felony, a hard felony. These ain't good people skills, right? HR isn't like, definitely hire that guy. He's got a swastika on his neck. You know what I mean? Definitely management material right there, right? Just don't do it. But a buddy of mine said to me after I couldn't find work, he said, hey, I can get you a job working at an antique show in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, carrying in and out antique furniture at an antique show for a weekend, like an auction/antique show. And he goes, $100 a day. I said, I'll take it. And he goes, but I got to tell you, the guy that owns the company is a Jew. Do you still want the job? And I said I don't care. I don't got to talk to this dude, do I? And he said, no, I told Keith Brookstein all about you. He said, he doesn't give a rat's butt what you believe, just don't break his furniture. And I showed up and I started working for this man. And in the stereotypical way, Keith wasn't practicing or religious at all, but he said, oy vey, all the time. Oy vey, what do you do to my furniture? He used to say it all, he's fit every little stereotype. Now, I see him, we work with each other, I do my job, I don't talk much with him, but it's a busy antique show, but I know he's the boss. But I make like $600 in tips alone. When people buy the furniture, we take it out to their card, and they tip us very well for putting the furniture in there. And I was stacked, I was bigger because I just got out of prison where I worked out all the time, so I was throwing this antique furniture around like it was nothing. So at the end of the weekend, Keith owes me $300, but I made $600 in tips. So in my anti-Semitic, ignorant way, I said, he's not going to pay me. He's going to say, I know you made $600 in tips. You should be happy with that. So I'm waiting for the end of the day, and I see him come up, and he starts to pay people. And I'm waiting for him to come over to me. And as he comes over, now I had already planned this argument in my head. He's going to say this, then I'm going to say that, and then I'm going to trump him, and he's going to say that. Blah, blah, blah. I already had the argument ready. I'm waiting. Like we do that with, all of us have that problem. Unless we're so spiritual, you'll float right out of here. But we all set arguments sometimes in our heads. You know what I mean? Oh, he's going to say this today. And you plan the whole argument before you get to work. But he came up to me and he says, how much do I owe you? And I said, $300. He said, oh, that's right. And he said, 1, 2, here's 300. And he said, you know what? You're a really, really good worker. Here's an extra $100. You really were a good worker. I said, son of a gun, you ruined, I had a fight waiting. And I'm cocked and ready to fight with you. And then he says, how are you getting back home to South Philly from Cherry Hill? He said, how are you going to get back? And I said, I don't know. I'll wait for the SEPTA to start running in the morning because it was like 2 in the morning. He says, no, he had the big truck with all the furniture. He goes, no, I'll take you back in my truck. And I said, you can't bring this big truck down our streets. I mean, it's narrow. And he says, I know that neighborhood. I used to live in that neighborhood. Okay. So he starts to drive me. And he's talking to me. Now, my swastika is blazing in his face as we're driving in a truck. He's driving. I'm the passenger now. And as we're driving, he looks over and he goes, so what do you do for a living? And I pointed out, I said, I don't do anything, dude. He said, why don't you come work for me? And I went and I worked for this man. He was one of the most kindest, intelligent men I'd ever met. And as we're in the truck, he said, what was wrong with me, because it's always what's wrong with me, is that I had such issues with myself and my self-esteem and my self-worth that if I broke something, I'd always go, oh, I'm so stupid. You know, we have people like that, oh, I'm so stupid. I'm just stupid. And one day I broke a marble, and Keith would always, don't break his furniture, right? I broke a marble top table at work one day. And I went, oh my God, Keith, I'm so stupid. I'm so sorry. I'm so stupid. Because I knew that I should have took the marble off the top. If you know good furniture, the marble's always, you take it off. And I was like, I got this, and just went to go grab it and throw it up on the truck, and this marble slipped off and broke, and I was embarrassed. And the one thing, oh, hey, Frank, what do you do to my furniture? So I'm cleaning this marble top thing up in front of a customer too, which was even more embarrassing. And I was like, Keith, I'm so stupid, I'm so sorry. And he came out, and I'm thinking he's gonna fire me. It was a pretty expensive table. And he just comes over to me and he grips me up by the back of my neck and he says, stop saying you're stupid, you idiot. Clean it up and let's go. So I start cleaning up this marble. And as I'm cleaning it up, he says, let's get on the truck and let's get home. It was a Friday, it was payday. And I'm thinking he paid us in cash. So I thought he was gonna take some cash out of my envelope that day and be like, this is for that table. You knew you shouldn't have done that. That's kind of how Keith was. And he didn't. He just said, here's your pay for the day. And as we're driving from like North Jersey at the time back to Philly, for about an hour and a half, and you know Jersey. If anyone knows Jersey, it says the Garden State, but more like it's more like a turnpike state. So between New York and Philly, and so we're driving down the turnpike, and he just is unloading on me, and he's just like, "Stop saying you're stupid. You're one of the most intelligent people I've ever met." He's like, "Stop saying you're stupid, because if you think you're stupid and you are stupid, then you played a trick on me." And he said these words to me that have stuck with me to this day, and I've repeated them back to him, and we stay in touch. He said, Frank, smart people can fake being dumb, but dumb people can't fake being smart. You just are. I got it. So I get off the truck that day, and now again, I'm still shaved head, still trying to hold on to these beliefs because it's all my friends, it's everything I've known, and it's where I have the most image in this world to myself. And as I walked home that day, I just said, I can't do this no more. I'm literally beating my head against the wall sometimes to believe these beliefs. I really was at the end. I was like, all right, it's wrong, but something's got to be right. And nothing was right. Nothing was right about it. So I started to get out. And I had to pay a cost and all that. Now, I'm not one of these people where they're like, you got to come get jumped out of your gang. You got to catch me. You know what I mean? I'm not going to go get beat up on purpose or killed on purpose. So I just avoided them at all cost. And at the time, the guys in my crew were robbing banks all around the country. A couple people were tangled with the Timothy McVeighs of the world. These are like some big time people that I'm running with, and so I'm scared. But I'm like, I'm just going to get out. And for 6 months, I just did everything I could to get out of it. Anytime people would have race, and say if I was driving down the street and say an Asian person would cut me off, and there's a stereotype, right? There's a stereotype, Asians are bad drivers, right? So an Asian person would cut me off, and I go, but I go, wait a minute, my aunt, who's fully white, hit a cow this year. Like, it's not a deer, it didn't jump in her way, it was already there, and she hit it, right? And I'm like, okay, so we're all bad drivers. And we're all good drivers, whatever, we're all bad. And I would see a black guy on the streets of South Philly selling food stamps, which was an old deal. People used to do it all the time. 50 cents on the dollar, 50 cents on the dollar. Sell your food stamps for 50 cents on the dollar. And I say, the movement. But wait a minute, my mom's been doing that her whole life. And I'm going to judge him because he's standing on a street corner. My mom does it out of her home. Are you kidding me? So those little things started to happen. And then the Oklahoma City bombing happened. And when the Oklahoma City bombing happened, there was this picture of a fireman running down the street with that dead little girl, and it just kept ripping at my heart. I couldn't do anything. I mean, I was really for 3 or 4 days just in fear that people would see me and see my swastika and say, he's one of those people that kills children. And I hated that feeling inside myself. So I walked into the FBI and said, here's my story. And now the FBI knew who I was. I used to have neo-Nazi TV show in Springfield, Illinois. Like, I ran crews all throughout Philly and caused so much havoc in that city. They knew exactly who I was. So at first they did not believe me and they did not know what I wanted to do. And for 2-3 days they called me back and because they wanted to hear anything at that time. Oklahoma City just happened. And they would bring me in and they say, hey, was you there when this happened? And I'd be, I wasn't there. So-and-so, I think so-and-so might have been there. I don't know, I wasn't there. And they already knew the answers. They say, was you there when this happened? And I say, yeah, I was standing right there when that happened. And they already knew the answers. They were just seeing if I would lie to them. So after a while, they knew that I was not going to inform on anybody. It wasn't what I was there for. I was just unloading on these poor FBI agents. You know, they became my counselors in a way. They said, why don't you go to the Anti-Defamation League? We have good friends there, good contacts, go there. And I walked into the ADL office, and they met me all in cloak and dagger like, and then they asked me to speak for them. So I went and I spoke at a couple places, but I knew in my heart that I didn't want to be a guy that just walked around and said, hey, look, I used to do bad things, now I don't do bad things anymore. You know, I just don't want to be that guy. So I went to the Philadelphia Flyers and I started a program called Harmony Through Hockey, where we got more black kids in the city of Philly to play the game. I love the game of hockey. So fast forward, I get married, I move off to Iowa. I start doing this hockey program for the Anaheim Ducks, for the Dallas Stars, all in Iowa. I worked in pro hockey for a long time, doing this program, and also started working in marketing. I'm a good marketing person. I marketed neo-Nazi stuff. I marketed whatever. But I still have the disease of addiction, and it kept popping back up. And I would get sober, and then I'd relapse. And I get sober, and I'd relapse. And I couldn't work on what was wrong with me until I got into recovery. And that just really gave myself to recovery, which if any of you know anyone in recovery or know about recovery, it's all about God. You work these 12 steps in your life so that you can be a good servant to God and help another person that is stricken with that same disease. That's what it's about. So in the last 3 years, I moved here to LA, and before I moved from Iowa to here, I was hit rock bottom again. Just one more time. One more time, Frank had to live by Frank's will. And every time I live by my will, I burn everything to the ground. So I came out here because there's this man, this older Jewish man from Canada, who had told me years earlier at a recovery place, he said, Frank, I can help you. I can help you. Now, in that time, about 12 years ago, I don't know that I'm Jewish. He comes up to me one day outside of this place we were hanging out, and he comes up to me, and now he says, a fellow Heb. I said, I'm not Jewish. What are you talking about? I'm not Jewish. I'm actually a former neo-Nazi who does interventions on other neo-Nazis. That's what I was living in LA doing 12 years ago, doing interventions on neo-Nazis to get them in and out of get them out of the movement. So I'm like, what are you talking about? And he said, I can help you. There's something not right with you. So when I struggled this time, I called him from Des Moines, Iowa, and I said, you remember how you said you were going to help me? I need that help. In that time, I was going through some of the Chabad centers because I was doing a documentary in Iowa on, I don't know if any of you guys know about Iowa, but Iowa's actually a really cool place. The oldest standing mosque in all of North America is in Iowa. It's in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's called Mother Mosque No. 1. The Maharishi University is there. We're the only university of meditation is in Fairfield, Iowa. We allowed marriage equality 5 years before the federal government. Massachusetts, then Iowa, were the two first states to allow marriage equality. So it has this good feel about it. So we were doing a documentary about it, and they asked me to be part of this documentary, where I went to this Chabad rabbi who became a friend over the years. I would go, he had a place called Maccabee's Deli, and I would go and eat his whole Megillah sandwich. So we're talking, and I asked him to be part of the documentary, and he says to me real bluntly, he goes, are you doing a documentary about how you're Jewish yet? I said, what are you talking, stop. Because he would kind of bust my chops sometimes. And he goes, Mink, your last name is Jewish. And I'm like, nah, it's Dutch. We heard it was some Dutch name. It's not Dutch, Frank. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do a DNA test. He was right. Now, as I'm going through this part of my life where I'm going through this dramatic change, moving from here, from Iowa, going through a divorce, I said, I'm going to give this a shot. I'm going to give this a shot. So I turned my life. I really turned my life over. And I said, God, whatever you want from me, I'm going to do. And he told me, and I'm not going to sound crazy here, but he told me I have a job for you. So real quick, I'm going to get to my activism, because I don't want to come up here and say, hey, I really found humbleness. I'm so humble, let me tell you about how humble I am, right? Because humbleness and humility is an action. I knew when I was a neo-Nazi that we were told to become police. It was pounded home to us, go be cops. We even have a neo-Nazi music band called the Arresting Officers. This talk, by the way, is not anti-police, but there's some problems. When we have 3.9% of the world's population, but we have 38% of the world's women's, now I'm doing not just the men, women's prison population, mostly people of color. Black people have been my teammates for a long time. So it was time for me to be a teammate to them. So I started using my voice, and the government said, come testify in front of Congress, Frank. Point out some of these people, and I did. I went and I said, this guy was one of us, and he's now this guy, and this guy was one of us, and he was in the Philadelphia Police Department. This guy was one of us, and he's in the Westchester Police Department. These people are real, and it's very dangerous that they pull black people over for not using their blinkers. It leads to trouble because they have no empathy, and they're using the badge as a weapon. Again, this is not all police, but there's rules and things that are set up right now that allow for police that have racist beliefs like I had to be bad cops. And I got tired of watching a public execution for 9.5 minutes of another human being, another child of God got publicly executed for 9.5 minutes in front of all of us. And I had to do something. So my activism now is that if we can point out these problems, there are things that we can do. And what we're trying to get is stuff like no more pulling over, because what they do is they pull over people of color for not using a blinker, and next thing you know, they're pulling them out of their cars. And the black community, again, who are my teammates in this world, they're fellow children of God, have been telling us for years, we are policed different. And we've been saying, no. Now, I'll put it personally. Just like when I was abused, I told people. And people say, it's not as bad as you're saying it is, Frank. Maybe you're blowing that out of proportion. Maybe you are that bad, and maybe this should be happening to you. You know what that did to me? It made me join the neo-Nazis. When a community has been telling us we've been being policed differently, and we say, you're blowing it out of proportion. Well, you're all criminals. No, it's not as bad as you say it is, but the numbers of incarceration back up what they're saying. Do you know what that does to a community? It'll drive you crazy. So it's time for people, especially with my color and with my background, to echo what they're saying. And for whatever you want to believe about an organization or even the movement, these words really mean something to me, to my core of my being, that black lives do matter. Absolutely. To my soul, they matter. And I'm going to stand up. And everything you see with the people videoing here and all, they're trying to do a show or whatever we want to put together about activism. Because when I've turned and when I open up that Torah and I read the Psalms where it tells me to stand up for the poor, stand up for the oppressed. You don't judge and say, well, maybe I should, not because of that. It just says stand up. And when we have mass incarceration, because of the way that policing is set up, I could tell you the laws, I could bore you to death about Terry v. Ohio and Pennsylvania versus Mims. And I've gone and studied these things, and I don't have a law degree. I sat on a boat for 2.5 years in Wilmington, California, right here, not Wilmington, Delaware. And I studied, just like the Psalms told me to do, just like Proverbs told me to do. Educate yourself, learn, And that's what I just set myself, I'm going to help. I happen to have a voice in this world because of who I was. People listen to what I say. And my voice is now used to say we need real, concrete police reform. It is not okay to put the poor in prison the way we're doing. It is not okay. And that's what that book told me. And so when I joined here, I heard my rabbi talk about it. I heard all the rest of you say, yeah, this is not right. And it fuels and gives me the right thing to do this in the right way, to not hate the police. I don't hate them. For the last 25 years, I've done police conferences all over the world. Seriously, I've been called everywhere. Whenever there's major hate crimes, they bring me in. The FBI brought me in. Homeland Security, I've gotten awards from these people. So I don't hate them. I actually played 2 years on an all-cop hockey team in Des Moines, Iowa. I was their goalie, and they were the worst team in the league. And I had 65 shots a night on me. And they loved me, and I loved them. And I don't hate them. But we definitely need real, concrete police reform. And it starts with traffic stops. I promise you that. If you look into where, and that's what I mean, I've looked at it, it's not to say all cops are bad or they're all racist. It starts with these tactics of pulling people out of their cars for not using a blinker. And you know when they do it sometimes? In front of their children. In front of their children. Imagine if you were a kid and you seen your dad being dehumanized and berated. Where are you going? What are you doing? Get out of the car. Here, let me search your pockets. Let me degrade you in front of your children. No matter what you think about that man, them children think that's their Superman. And now we're going to degrade them? So everything in my recovery today is to be an activist. It's all I'm about. Being an activist so my voice is used for others, not for myself anymore. And I wake up in the morning and guys, I was a really bad drug addict. Really bad. As bad as you can get, to where I stuck needles in my arm. And I used to wake up in the morning and do that. I would tie a belt around my arm, and today I wrap tefillin around my arm. Every morning. And every morning I do my prayers and I do my meditation. Every morning I let Hashem run my life. Because it's not about Frank today. When I live about Frank, I burn it to the ground. And see, I'll end with this. What really changed my life is that before I started living this life that I'm living in the last 3 years, before I really started living this life, in my head, because I'm a broken alcoholic drug addict with I'm an egomaniac with no self-esteem issues, I either think I'm the best or I think I'm a piece of trash. My brain doesn't know how to stay in that middle. It doesn't. It's broken, guys. That's why they have programs with the 12 steps, is to keep my brain on the fact that I'm a child of God and every human being on this planet is a child of God. And if I'm of service to them, I don't think about me. The last thing I will say is, I learned this in Judaism, and I love this. Someone told me this, the day you were born is the day that God said the world can't go on without you. But my mitzvah back to God is to realize this world is not about me. It's not about me. It's about others all the time. And I have so much peace and joy in my life. And Hashem takes care of me so much. Every time I'm in need, he's been there for me. In all of these little things, he doesn't give me everything I want. Definitely gives me what I need. So I just wake up every morning and do this deal. Every morning. And it's my day. My day is to practice being a good Jew. I used to have Sig Heil written on the back of my head, guys. And I'm a proud Jewish person. I love my Torah. I love studying. I love King David. I'm obsessed with King David, actually. I just am. I'm obsessed. What a great person to be. A faulty man who pulled himself back together. Pulled himself back together when he humbled himself before Hashem. So that is my story, guys. Thank you for allowing me to share it with you guys. And I hope you guys have any questions, or if you have any questions ever. I told Rabbi before, I said, look, I'm your racist encyclopedia. If you ever need anything, come call me. I know it all about that world. So, and I said, I'm your racist encyclopedia. I promise you I can break it all down. And that is my job, to be of service. To be of service. So do we want to open up? I don't know what's the next move here, but thank you all for allowing me to share my story with you all.
Pretty powerful. So I want to ask you a question. Why do you think it was so important to me to have Frank be the one who starts off our High Holy Day season? Yeah. Season of Teshuvah. Yeah, about turning, about repenting. Anything else? Yeah.
To show that there's hope, that change is possible, no matter how dark it might be.
Change is possible no matter how dark it is, right? Absolutely. We live in a world that is full of so much judgment, right? Where we might, this isn't on. You're not hearing me. Sorry about that. We live in a world that's full of so much judgment that it can be so easy to assume that we know who a person is just by looking at them. We live in a world where we might tell ourselves, this is who I am and this is who I'm always going to be. I'm too old to change. I'm too this to change. I'm too that to change. Not the case, right? I'm hoping that by hearing Frank's incredible story and by having an opportunity to talk to him, we don't have time right now to ask questions because I know we have so many and we have so much to talk about, but I hope we continue to. Frank is a phenomenal member of our community, and I know he's open to having meaningful conversations with people who are here and people who aren't here. But for all of us to be inspired within ourselves, to think too about the ways that maybe we want to change, the things that maybe we want to do to open our hearts up to the people that we're capable of being, that we can open ourselves up to knowing that, yes, every single one of us is a person of God, and every single one of us has the ability to do so much for one another. So with that said, let's turn back to our prayer for our Selichot service. And we're going to turn Hashivenu, the bottom of page 2.
Hashivenu, Hashivenu, Adonai elecha, v'nashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh, Yameinu
On page 3, we turn to B'motzei Menucha, which is a responsive reading, and I hope that you will join in when it's bolded and italicized. At the close of the Sabbath, our voices we raise. Give ear to us, you who dwells in praise.
To hear our song and our prayer.
Arouse your right hand to do deeds of might because of the Lamb on Moriah's height. Comfort his children who cry while it's night.
And hear our song and our prayer.
Devoutly they seek the light of your face. Endow them with light from your heavenly place. Father in heaven, withhold not your grace.
But hear our song and our prayer.
Groaning like one in travail they remain, helpless before you. Pray do not refrain. In mercy to wipe away sin's shameful stain.
And hear our song and our prayer.
Justice and love from beginning of time, kindred didst make, and the sinful might climb, lightly from sin's degradation and grime.
Oh, hear our song and our prayer.
Merciful one, if our voices prove more numerous than virtues, oh, close not the door of mercy, but add from your heavenly store.
And hear our song and our prayer.
Pray, turn away from the sins of your flock, ponder the trials of Abraham's stock. Quickly give ear to their cry, O our rock.
And hear our song and our prayer.
Receive you their prayer as substitute for sacrifice offered in the temple of yore. Teach them your wonders, ways to explore.
And hear our song and our prayer.
At the close of the Sabbath, our voices we raise. Give ear unto us, you who dwells in praise, to hear our song and our prayer.
Achat sha'alti beit Adonai. Achat sha'alti ota vakesh. Shivti, shivti beveit Adonai. Shivti, shivti kol yemei chayai lachazot benoam Adonai ulevaker behechalu lachazot benoam Adonai, to gaze upon the beauty of Adonai. Achat sha'alti beit Adonai. Achat sha'alti ota vakesh. Achat sha'alti beit Adonai. Achat sha'alti ota vakesh.
One thing I ask of Adonai, for this I yearn, to dwell in the house of Adonai all the days of my life, to behold God's beauty, to pray in God's sanctuary. We turn to page 5. The elders. We rise now to honor them. Our elders, from where we have studied and worshiped and celebrated the passages of life and time. Our elders who have taught us goodness, honesty, and the sanctity of life, whose mantles are woven with threads of memory, embroidered with silver and gold, majestic folds of silk and velvet, and royal hues befitting their rank, as brilliant as the sun. We rise now to honor them as they put aside these everyday mantles of splendor and don their sacred garments, the vestments of purity and wholeness, befitting the days of awe so soon approaching. Each in its turn is fitted with wimple, mantle, and crowns, each more stunning than the last. Majestic folds of velvet and silk to clothe the holy words, a canvas of purest white as brilliant as the moon. The holy season has now begun, and the elders in their yontif clothes stand proud and tall before us, beacons of wisdom and light, reminders of the holiness we seek on this new day in Elul. We prepare to change our Torah covers, as we will do in just a moment. Before we do, we offer just a few prayers. First, this quote from Isaiah: "Though your sins are like crimson, they shall turn white as snow." Tonight, as we take out these Torah scrolls, what do? We take the colored, beautiful scrolls that we have, covers that we have, we take them off in order to put on these beautiful white ones, befitting our holy season, marking this beginning for all of us. Compassionate One, remember we are your children. Help us to know again that we are cradled during these awesome days of changing light. We want to return to your lap, to your arms. Remind us how to believe that we are loved, not for our achievements, but because we are yours, as the moon of Elul wanes and the new year rushes in, hear us with compassion and fold us. Don't let us go. Tonight, for the first time during this holy season, we hear the 13 attributes, which is a quote from the Torah of the prayer that God actually creates for God's self, saying, you know what, even I, God, sometimes make mistakes. Even sometimes I lose my cool. And when that happens, I need to be reminded that I am compassionate and kind, and that is the core of my being. And so God says to all of us, whenever you need to be heard, whenever you've made mistakes and you want forgiveness, say these words so that I am reminded of how forgiving and compassionate I can be. So I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we hear them.
Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum Vechanun, Erech Apayim, V'Rav Chesed V'Emet, Notzer Chesed L'Alafim, Nose Avon V'Fesha V'Chata V'Nakes.
Adonai, Adonai, compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, abounding in kindness and faithfulness, extending mercy unto the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity, transgression, and sin, granting pardon.
Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omed. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omed. Al haTorah ve'al avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al haTorah ve'al avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omed. Al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, al shlosha devarim, ha'olam omed. Al haTorah ve'al avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Al haTorah ve'al avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Dundai, 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 dai. 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 Eretz Yisrael beli Torah, היא כגוף בלי נשמה. ארץ ישראל בלי תורה, היא כגוף בלי נשמה. דונדאי, 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 די. 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 ישראל, ישראל, ואורייתא חד הוא. ישראל, ישראל, ואורייתא חד הוא. תורה אורה, תורה אורה, הללויה. תורה אורה, תורה אורה, הללויה. הללויה, תורה אורה, תורה אורה, הללויה. תורה אורה, תורה אורה, הללויה. ישראל, ישראל, ואורייתא חד הוא ישראל, ישראל, ואורייתא חד הוא תורה, תורה, הללויה, תורה, תורה, הללויה, הללויה, תורה, תורה, הללויה, תורה, תורה, הללויה, ישראל, ישראל, ואורייתא חד הוא ישראל, ישראל, ואורייתא חד הוא על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד, על שלושה דברים, it's twisted, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים, 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 על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים, על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. השיבנו, השיבנו, אדוני אליך, ונשובה, ונשובה, חדש, חדש, ימינו כקדם.
Help us to return to you, Adonai. Then truly shall we return. Renew our days as of old. We turn to our vidui of the service, where we begin to recount some of the things, some of the ways in which we may have missed the mark in this past year. Holy One of Being, we are not so arrogant to pretend that the trial of our lives does not reveal our flaws. We know ourselves in this moment of prayer to have failed, the ones we love and the stranger again and again. We know how often we do not bring to the surface of our lives the hidden goodness within. Where we have achieved, O Holy One of Being, we are grateful. Where we have failed, we ask forgiveness. Remember how exposed we are to the chances and terrors of life. We were afraid. We sometimes chose to fail, and we ask, turn our thoughts from the hurt to its remedy. Free us of the torments of guilt. Forgiven, Holy One of Being, we shall then forgive others. Failing, we shall learn to understand failure. Renewed and encouraged, we shall strive to be like those who came before us, human, sinners sometimes, yet a blessing.
Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avoteinu tavo lefanecha tefilateinu, tefilateinu ואל תתעלם מתחינתנו, שאין אנחנו הזפנים, וכשעורף לא מה לפניך,
למה לפניך, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אלוהינו, ואלוהי אבותינו ואימותינו. צדיקים אנחנו ולא חטאנו, אבל אנחנו חטאנו.
O God, God of our mothers and fathers, grant that our prayers may reach you. Do not be deaf to our pleas, for we are not so arrogant and stiff-necked as to say before you that we are perfect and have not sinned. Rather do we confess we have gone astray. We have sinned. We have transgressed. Who among us is righteous enough to say, I have not sinned? We are arrogant, brutal, careless, destructive, egocentric, and false, greedy, heartless, insolent, and joyless. Our sins are an alphabet of woe.
Ay, 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 ay,
Page
ay, 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 Ashamnu, Bagadnu, Gazalnu, Dibarnu Dofi, Hevinu, Veirshanu, Zadnu, Hamasnu, Tafalnu Shaker. Ay, 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 Ya'atznu ha, Kizavnu, Latnu, Maradnu, Niatnu, Sararnu, Avinu, Pashanu, Sararnu, Kishinu Ore. Ay, 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 Rashanu, Shichatnu, Tiavnu, Tainu, Titanu, ay, 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 ay.
We turn to page 10. Achet shechatanu lefanecha. For the sin we have committed against you consciously or unconsciously, openly or secretly. For the sin we have committed against you for not taking good enough care of ourselves. For the sin we have committed against you with our ignorance or failure to pay attention. For the sin we have committed against you by hardening our hearts. For the sin we have committed against you by speaking slander. For the sin we have committed against you by our silence. For the sin we have committed against you by not apologizing or by failing to forgive. for the sin we have committed against you by hurting others in any way. V'al kulam Eloha Selichot salach lanu mechal lanu kaper lanu. For all these sins, God of forgiveness, forgive us, pardon us, grant us atonement.
V'al kulam Eloha Selichot salach lanu mechal lanu kaper lanu. Ve'al kulam Eloha Selichot Salach lanu mechal lanu Salach lanu mechal lanu Kaper lanu.
Please be seated as we turn to page 11. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel wrote, "Should we despair of our being unable to attain perfect purity? We should if perfection were our goal. However, we are not obliged to be perfect once and for all, but only to rise again and again beyond the level of the self. Perfection is divine, and to make it a goal of humans is to call on humans to be divine. All we can do is try to wring our hearts clean in contrition. Contrition begins with a feeling of shame at our being incapable of disentanglement from the self. To be contrite at our failures is holier. To be complacent in perfection." There's a prayer that we are about to sing, which is Anabakha. It's a prayer that could be said each Friday night before L'Chadodi, a prayer that can be part of morning liturgy, a prayer that is traditionally said right after counting the Omer, once we get to the spring. But it's a prayer that I associate with this season because it instructs us, it calls upon God and all of God's holiness. Even though it doesn't use the name of God, this is a prayer that speaks about yearning. It speaks about longing for a deep connection with something greater than ourselves, longing to untie our tangles, to untie the things that are holding us back, the tangles that we create for ourselves in our relationships and the way in which we go about our lives. It's a prayer about yearning for peace, for release of our anxieties and tensions, for connection and union, for love, for being seen, and connecting with the sacred in our lives. What could be a more high holy day than that? So I'm going to do a simple melody of Anabakha, along with some of these English words here. And if you've never heard the melody before, that's okay. That's fine. You can choose to sing along, or you can simply take a moment for yourself to think about all of the yearning in your life. Anabakha chedulat yamincha tatir tzurua yai dai 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 yai dai dai dai. That just keeps repeating. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Vaed Yai Lai Lai Lai. It goes in the English. Source of mercy, with loving strength, untie our tangles. Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai Lai Lai. Your chanting folk, raise high, make pure, accept our song. Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai Lai Lai. Like your own eye, God keep us safe, who seek union with you. Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai Lai Lai. Cleanse and bless us, infuse us ever with loving care. Yai Lai 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 Yai Lai Lai Lai. Receive our prayer, do hear our cry. secret knows. Yai, lai, 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 yai, lai, lai, lai. Through time and space, your glory shines, majestic one. Yai, dai, 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 dai. We're going to take a moment. Right outside this room, we actually have a bunch of pencils and postcards. Out of respect for time, I'm actually not going to bring them into the sanctuary right now, but this is what I want to ask of you. When you're leaving services tonight, or perhaps before you leave, to take one of those postcards and to take a pencil, and I want you to write down something that you wish to let go of this year. I want you to write down, you don't have to put your name on it, but I would like you to leave it here. Why? Because I want to take your words and transform them into a prayer of Yom Kippur. So it's not me saying what I believe all of us want to change in our lives. It's actually reflecting the words of the people who are in this room. And for all of you online, you are also invited to do this, and there'll be a way for you to submit it as well, because we want to hear your voices as well. But please, when you're leaving, take part in that. You can think of what you might want to write in this moment as we turn to page 12 and prepare to say the words of Shema Kolenu.
Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem Aleinu. Shema Kolenu, Adonai Eloheinu, Chus v'rachem Aleinu. V'kavel v'rachamim v'ratzon et tefilatenu. Hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva. Chadesh yameinu kekeden. Chadesh yameinu kekeden.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit as we turn to a shortened version of Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, we come before you without pretense. Avinu Malkeinu, we are reaching toward you. Help us find you. Avinu Malkeinu, strengthen us for the holy days that lie ahead. Avinu Malkeinu, help us to heal ourselves and become whole. Avinu Malkeinu, help us to repair a broken world. Avinu Malkeinu, hasten for us the day of redemption. Avinu Malkeinu.
Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Baneinu. Avinu Malkeinu, Chonenu Baneinu, Ki ein banu maasim. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed. Aseh imanu, tzedaka v'chesed, ve'oshienu. Avinu Malkeinu,
as we turn to the end of the service, we prepare to hear the sound of the shofar by the one and only George Mayer. George, thank you so, so much. And we're going to offer our shofar blessings. We've heard a little bit of shofar every Friday night throughout the month of Elul without the blessings, just as part of our Elul practice. But tonight on Selichot, we offer our blessings to truly take in this sound.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
תקיעה גדולה.
Shavua Tov, Yesher Koach.
Shavua Tov, thank you all
Shavua Tov,
so
everyone.
much. Thank you so much for being here, for being a part of our beginning to the High Holy Day season. As you know, Rosh Hashanah is right around the corner. We look forward to being able to welcome you for our holy days ahead. Please, please, please take those index cards and those pencils and write down things that I can use. Everyone online, thank you also so much for being here. Shana Tova.
I know.